Hey everyone, Tactics here, kicking off my plus 10 Route Walkthrough series of the War Within Season 1 with a Week 1 run here of Mists of TIRNA SCITHE. In this video, I'll be walking you guys through the route that we use to get this key done and hopefully help you guys unlock your portals and get your Keystone Hero achievement, which notably is going to be a little bit tougher this season potentially, with plus 10 keys now having both Fortified and Tyrannical on them. For those interested in the route itself, I'll link that down in the description below. And if you find this video useful, make sure you subscribe for more content like it. Otherwise, let's just get it started. We are going to be opening the door right here, which for anyone that does not know, this is now openable by Night Elves, Tauren, High Mountain, Druids, and Herbalists with at least 25 skill. That's an important part. I've seen a lot of people saying it doesn't work for Herbalists. You need at least 25 Kaz Algar skill in Herbalism to open that door. So we're starting off with a big door open there, and we're just doing a big pull off the top with a bunch of these spike claws and this tree here with Bloodlust. Notably, this can be quite dangerous, especially as you start getting into fort keys. And so how these guys work is it will jump to the furthest target. So we're going to have one of our ranged stand out. Our hunter is going to stand out and bait those. Actually, if our mage as well standing out and baiting those. And so what's going to happen here is we're going to now drop a binding, and that's going to interrupt the mid charge. So they're going to jump out there, but they're not actually going to do damage because they're going to be stunned by the binding. And then we're going to chain that binding with an Ursul's, and now they're going to jump out there and they're going to get pulled back in by the Ursul's, and that buys us a lot of time to actually kill them before the damage actually overwhelms the person out there baiting. Now, a couple notes of this. Obviously, if you don't have Ursul's, you don't have binding, there are a few other things you can use. AoE stuns are great, leg sweep, shockwave. Speaking of warriors, spear. If you have a warrior with a spear ability, that also works just like these abilities. That player out there may be taking a lot of damage, especially if you don't have some of the abilities I mentioned. Bleed cleanses do work on the dot they put, so if you have an evoker, if they're a dwarf, that can be useful. So keep those things in mind. Otherwise, we're just nuking this pack here down. You can also use combat drops. Actually, there you can see on the overgrowth, if you have a combat drop like Meld, if you have a Feign and Viz, you're going to see our Hunter, it gets targeted, he's going to Feign, Overgrowth cancels, you don't need to deal with the Egg Sac. Other thing to be aware of, I got hit by a curse here. Where is that coming from? The Spite Claws, when they die, they will leave a swirly on the ground that I stood in here. This also debuffs all the mobs' damage taken increase, so that's why that starts to speed up a lot at the end here, because all these mobs get stacked up with that damage taken increase. Just knock those guys back near the end because they do have their heal on auto attack buff up, so I just stay away from them. Then we're going to do the quick little skip here. This skip is super easy. It was done all the time in Shadowlands. All you need to do is have one of the required CCs, there's like 7 different classes that can CC this mob. So this mob is the one you CC. Any threat reduction CC immediately works. So that is Mind Soothe, that is Sap, that is Imprison from Demon Hunter, which is what we're going to use here. That is also Sleepwalk. So 4 classes can do that. If you don't have one of those 4 classes, you can use Monk, Para Rop. You can para this mob, Rop it over. That's fine. Mage or Hunter can both CC it either with Polymorph or Frost Trap. Then they can run by, and then they first, and then everyone else runs by, and then they can Invis or Feign after everyone is through to drop combat. The other thing that works is a Warlock Gate. I actually have a clip of it here for people that don't know where it is. This is the first pull here. We're going to kill the first pull. We have a Warlock. He's going to run over to this corner here. So that's that pack we're skipping. He can put a Warlock Gate straight through the wall right here, and you can just go through it. So that is, I believe, 8 classes, 7 classes, something like that. Almost every single class in the game that can actually skip this pack. If you can't do that, you can Invis Pod, really, but you don't need to. You really, like, almost every single comp in the game is going to be able to skip this pack. Just make sure if you are one of those CCs, you do not get into range of this guy. That is a common mistake. Don't get into range of this guy. Max range your CC. See, he max ranges his CC. Everyone hugs the wall, and no one gets in combat. We also go through here. He's a night elf, so he can open this gate. We get our mushrooms before this pull. On higher keys, you'll probably see people pull the bow breakers with this next pull. We're not going to do that. Not required at all. Which get the green mushroom for your 10% stat buff. And then we just do this pack. Pretty straightforward. Keep kicks on both the harvesters. Use AoE stops on the actual channeled cast they have, because it's one of the few things that can be stopped. Save your kicks for these spirit bolts. Use all your kicks on these spirit bolts. Yeah, we kill the casters and we chain up the soul cleavers onto these bow breakers. For these guys, they channel their big AoE at 50% health. So what you're going to see us do here is we're going to priority target damage one of these bow breakers to separate the damage. Again, on higher keys, you'll probably see people hit them at the exact same time and then stack defensives. But for your general pug key, that's probably going to be overwhelming, less coordination. So just do one at a time, focus one bow breaker, and then once it's below 50%, you can swap and start hitting the other one just so you still get cleave on both. Because this guy is now never going to do that cast again. Once he's below 50%, never cast again. You just have these circles. So that's how I recommend dealing with that. Then you have this first boss. You want to keep a kick rotation on Ingra Maloch. That is very, very important. These bolts, especially on these higher Tyrant keys, do start to hurt quite a bit. Otherwise, though, all of your damage needs to be into Droman on pull here, because the boss is going to get a pretty big shield. Actually, it's not instantly. I think he doesn't have it off on pull, but he gets it very, very quickly. So you do want to prioritize damage here on Ulfaron. This is player baited. These Tears of the Forest, you can see it's all cluster run players. So because we're in the same line, we can just kind of rotate together slightly on these like fans away from this boss platform. And this area is clear. We can just keep going in this direction as long as this phase is a thing. The fear is pretty annoying. What you can do in our comp, we had a shaman. That's Tremor Totem. Tremor Totem is huge. Warriors also have an AoE fear cleanse now for people that don't know. So if you have a warrior in your comp, you don't need a shaman. You can use their AoE fear cleanse on the fear. However, if you don't have one of those things, you should make sure that you are positioned such that when the fear goes off, you aren't pushed through puddles. Like if you were standing here, for example, you will always get feared directly away from the boss. So the boss is here. You would be feared this way. That would be very bad for you because you're just getting feared through puddles. So make sure you are positioned accordingly if you don't have a fear break. Otherwise, this boss is pretty straightforward. This always transitions at 20% health. So you're going to want to try and save your damage for when that happens. And you're going to see here, boom, hits 20% health. And then we should have damage rolling, ideally. And we're just going to slam this boss with all of our damage. You have like 15 seconds for this damage amp window. But the big thing is here. This Embrace Darkness cast is the DR. There's still 40 seconds after this damage amp ends where the boss takes full damage. So we are cleaving off of the boss in this phase. And the goal here is that we, at least on higher tyrannical keys as well, is that you will kill Ingra Maloch before he gets his third DR. So sometime in the second damage amp phase or just after it. And that is the goal. So we want to get him low enough here before he casts Embrace Darkness, which is coming up in a second here. Probably just after this. Right after this, now this is whenever he casts it, that's when he stops taking damage. And you want a full swap to Droman this. Until then, he takes full regular damage. He doesn't take damage amp, but he takes regular damage. And yeah, that's what happens. Don't charge into the disorient with your kick. But that is why you do want to make sure you are still cleaving him so you can have him in a health range where you can burst him down in the actual damage amp. So that's that boss. Little tip for the Mistcaller, start of the maze. So one, get the seed. Anyone can get the seed, actually. It doesn't require any of the things to open the gates. So make sure someone touches that for the graveyard. Notice if you put a mark on Mistcaller. We're now watching Mistcaller. You can see the mark, see the mark, see the mark. You can actually see the first two mazes without actually needing to solve them in any way. You can just watch Mistcaller. So she walked this way. We know this is the first one. And we're watching her. She goes up the hill. We know the one up the hill is the second one. No need to do anything in terms of solving for those ones. But also in terms of solving, I do have a weak aura here that you guys can use. It's not downloaded actually in this video. Here it is. There it is. I'll link this down in the description. Very, very useful. It's like the English version of like an old Chinese weak aura that was used back in Shadowlands itself. So this is very, very useful to help you, kind of solve the maze. And there are set maze paths basically. And once this knows what your maze path is, it just tells you what the route is. So again, once it figures it out, you don't need to ever actually solve the maze again. Very, very handy weak aura there. Otherwise, defenders are new abilities. They changed the abilities of two of the mobs in this maze. Defenders are one of them. So they have Expel, which is, it hits pretty hard. This is a random target fizz hit. You can see that's how much damage it dealt, right? That's a big old hit. So especially because we have Fortified now active on the 10. Be aware if you're a Clothy because Expel is a fizz hit. Otherwise, Mist Wards, it does not go away until the mob is dead. At least from what we saw in terms of pull length. So make sure you are giving yourself enough space with the placements of them. So we know it's up here. We also know it's all the way up here, so we don't need to solve the maze at all. Guardians are the other changed mob, and these guys are scary. You're going to see later I get punished because I didn't respect them. Basically, this buff they have, for every nearby mob, they gain 3% damage. So that's their passive. And then their ability is a Tank Buster. I believe it's a mixed nature and physical hit, an Animus Slash, that also applies a stacking dot to you. So that is very, very important because basically One Guardian is pretty manageable, especially in only a 4-pack here. One Guardian in a 5-pack obviously gets 3% stronger. Two Guardians in a 5-pack, all of a sudden your tank is in extreme danger, and you need to make sure you are planning defensives around that. So that is something to keep in mind there. Otherwise, not really a ton. There's kicks to be had in this area. Shapers, one kick assigned to them. It puts a shield out. If you miss the kick, make sure you purge ASAP. Then the tenders are the other kick. They have a heal. That one is a 100% kick that. I don't believe it fully removes the heal if you purge it, but it stops reapplying the heal. So you want to make sure you do also purge that if you miss that. But again, ideally, those are just 2 interrupts. Make sure you are kicking both. At most, there's 1 of each in a pull. So you want to just assign 1 person to each. Stingers are the magic debuff here. Healers just want to make sure whenever that goes out, you are getting a quick dispel. Boom is jumping out. Get a dispel on that quickly. The dot hits pretty hard, as you could see there. Especially if it wombo combos like with the defender there. You saw the defender hit a different target, but if that defender had hit the target of the stinger, it would have been bad news. So watch for that kind of overlap. Otherwise, we're just running around solving the maze, which again, for those that don't know, the maze is just you find the symbol that has the one thing different. There's circle, no circle. There's flower and leaf, and then there's filled flowers and leaves and unfilled flowers and leaves. So you want to find the one that is unique. And again, otherwise, that weak aura will be able to auto solve this for you at some point after a few doors. Mini boss here. Nothing too notable about that. One thing, too, that we're not doing in this run is using pets to pull through walls. That is something that is doable. I believe potentially we will pull through the wall before the boss, though. Let's go see. Oh, this is where I die. Okay, this is where I don't respect the Guardian. So basically, again, like I said, the Guardian stacking damage increase based on mob counts. We know this is the room where you can double pull because there's no maze wall here for you can just walk through. So we killed the Stalker and the Stinger, and then we're like, okay, let's double pull. But there's still a Guardian alive, and then I walk into a pull with 2 Guardians. So as you can imagine, this is about to end very poorly for me. So if you get this room, do not chain pull until you've killed the Guardians. Yeah, that is a good thing to note. So we end up running back. I think they killed the Guardian. Oh, no, they healed up. They healed up, which is not ideal. I don't know if I live this. That's crazy. Okay, so I do end up living it somehow. I got Incarn back, yeah. So be very, very careful. If you have massive defensive CDs, then you can do it. But yeah, it's very, very spooky. This is the wall pull anyone with 40-yard range can do. So this is the last maze. This is the one beside it. This is the one we're going to be pulling. You can see I move here. You can tag the Stalker with a 40-yard ability, right? That wall is fake, basically. So anyone with a 40-yard ability can tag this pack for some extra count. Boom. Tag that Stalker, and it just walks through the wall. So we fight that. Again, double Guardian pull. Be very scared, tanks. These guys hurt. And then we go into the boss. This boss, pretty straightforward. Again, you do a little maze game in the middle of it, where you have to find the clone. There is a change, actually. I think I pulled up a clip here. There we go. Because we didn't do it on this boss, but we did it in this +9 run. I believe this is different from Shadowlands. I don't remember this in Shadowlands, but basically the dodgeballs deal damage to the mobs now. So if we have the guessing game proc, boom, we find the right clone, which again is the clone that is not, that is unique, right? So in this case, it's the filled one. It's this one here, the only one that is filled. And so we all see it, we ping it, boom. And so what's going to happen now is we all line up. I have the boss in the middle-ish of the room. And so everyone's going to line up here facing this clone. And you're going to see the dodgeballs go out. Boom. We all step out of the way and watch the clone's health. Boom. And this scales with key level. So that's going to be very, very useful as you get into higher keys, especially, the higher Tyran keys where these boss fights are going to last longer. Use those dodgeballs to your advantage. Otherwise, it's all just about, keeping these Vulpins like slowed. You don't need to kill them at all, especially if you keep them slowed. The problem with this comp is we were pretty heavy melee, I think, and they were spawning relatively close. Actually, this is not the right video anymore, but where is it? There. So if things spawn too close with the Guardian, the auto moonfires can sometimes trigger it, but otherwise, we were doing things like the mage rooting it out there, and then we can chain things like Poly. It already had moonfire on it though. Chaining things like Poly, like freezing trap, assuming you don't have auto moonfires going out and stuff like that. Very useful. Hibernate also works. These are considered beast mobs. If you have a druid with hibernate, if it ever spawns in melee like that, yeah, things like stuns are also pretty nice. Again, auto moonfire, love that. So anything you can't really CC those, because you don't want to waste damage on them. And there you go. Anyone who touches it, as you can see there, will trigger the stun. So be aware. Anyone, just need to touch it in any way. So that is something to be aware of. I think we died a few times on this boss, actually, the various things. But that's okay. Watch the Vulpins. That's like the main pain point for a lot of groups here. And then don't dodgeball each other. And you can see here, when we're clustered like that, like it's way easier to dodge the actual lines there, as opposed to if we were fully fanned out around the boss. There's a lot less safe spots. So something to keep in mind as well. Especially because, you know, once you get to this key level, getting hit by one dodgeball is death. So you don't really care if you get hit by 2 dodgeballs or more, because you're already dying to 1 dodgeball, right? Jumping down here, another seed we can grab right here for the second graveyard. And we're going to do another quick skip here, which again can be done by all the same classes that can do the first one. Literally every single one of them. The main difference with Priest, who was Mind Soothing the first one, is they would now levitate you, and you jump from here with Levitate to here. Same with like Slow Fall. You can jump from here with Slow Fall to jump down here and skip all these guys. Also, if this is a good pat, sometimes it pats like over here, you can just walk this way without anything. So something to keep in mind. We are, of course, going to Imprison. You can see how close you can get to this mob. Don't walk directly through it, but you can walk very close to the mob when you have the threat reduction CC. Now we're going to do a double pull here. The main part of this area is never pulling more than 2 Staghorns at a time. Not only do they acquire 2 kicks each, the Acid Nova also applies a nature damage increase to your entire group. So pulling 2 of them and having that stack up means just you're dead. We're just dead. So be aware of that. These are also murders, these big circles, which got a new animation update to make them a bit more clear. And the other thing to be aware of then are these dots going out on random players. It's not a poison or anything, it's just a dot you have to deal with. And especially when Acid Nova goes out and players have that dot, that is when they are in the most danger because of that nature damage increase. So those players, if you have the Acid Nova debuff and then you get a circle, use defensive, healers, those are the ones that are going to need the most healing. So we do the big double pull here. We're then going to do another double pull here. And again, these double pulls are kind of coordinated to have 1 Staghorn in it, no matter what. We're also going to hit a CC, I believe, on these Reavers. These are the guys you need to be aware of. They will patrol into you. We want them in the next pull, just because this is, you know, there's already a lot going on in this pull. We can add them into the next one. Same deal as the previous pull here. You know, it's literally almost the exact same makeup. Beware of the puddles that spawn when these little larvae die. They actually tick very, very hard. And if you're not aware of it and you just start eating a bunch of puddle tick damage, you're going to be in a lot of danger. Fast forwarding here. We do get this Reaver pulled. Basically, when it comes to Reavers, a lot of the damage from the Reaver, as opposed to Shadowlands version of this mob, has been put into the dot, not the charge. The charge isn't too dangerous, but it applies a poison dot. So basically, the kind of rule of thumb that seems to be working, and what we're going with, is that you can pull Reavers equal to the number of poison dispels you have, and that will be relatively safe at higher key levels. So if you have 2 or 3 poison dispels, you can pull 2 or 3 Reavers at a time. We have 1 spam poison dispel in this group, and then we have poison cleansing totem. So that is what we can actually use in this case. So it's fine at this key level, but if you're pushing higher, I would not pull more Reavers than you have poison dispels, just because that dot will ramp up relatively quickly and it can be quite dangerous, and it stacks too. So if you pull like 3 Reavers and the mage had 2 stacks now, you can see how hard it's ticking, get a dispel on them. But that's just something to be aware of. We're gonna go in here, going to pull another pack on this side. I think we accidentally pulled this. I think it was Arcane Mage that was doing something that was pulling these from way above you. Just generally be aware when these guys are padding above you. Usually they won't pull, but sometimes they do. And now this is going to be a bit problematic for us. I think we were planning to do just 2 pulls over here, but now we got this pack of Reavers, which is pretty scary. Again, just kind of poisoning, dispelling on cooldown. People using defensives, especially when that Acid Nova just went out. And luckily that it was on the mage, who's a very tanky character. He had the Acid Nova debuff and the poison dot, but very, very scary. And we're almost a count here, so I'm going to run up and pull like this guy up here. This Reaver, I'm going to go grab. There's like 3 Reavers up here you can kind of grab. So I go and grab that guy, and he's going to come with us eventually. He's going to fly in, but that's who we add to get our count here. That is also the thing to note for MISTS, is because of the maze being variable, I can't tell you what maze you're going to get. I can't tell you how much count you're going to get. You may have more or less than us. You can do 1 more pull over this way. Up here, there's another Acid Nova guy pull. There's a couple more of these Reavers that you could pull up in the air this way and up in the air this way. So depending on your count, you need to adjust at the end here because of how variable the maze is. This boss fight, so some things to note. These larvae, for some reason, above 70% health, do not have any fixate target. So tanks, you can just aggro these mobs before the first consumption cast. That is an important note. There's nothing special about it. They just have an aggro table until the first consumption, and then they fixate. Mind Link now always targets the tank. You can see here, everyone is positioned on the opposite side of the boss for me when that happens, and I can run straight back and break it almost instantly. That is the big benefit here. Reavers, just like also the first mobs, should have noted this earlier. I think I'm going to drop like an Ursul's here. The dash works the exact same. It's going to try and get to the target, and if it doesn't, if it gets pulled back by a spear, by an Ursul's, by a binding stun, then it just will put the actual ability on cooldown, and it won't actually debuff the player. So just like the mobs at the start of the dungeon that we talked about there. Otherwise, the one new ability was that Acid Nova you saw. They got rid of the kick. The kick mind control thing for anyone that played in Shadowlands is gone. Don't worry about that. Instead, this circle just pulls you in a little bit, and it does that AoE around the boss. So melee are very, very happy with that change. Smile. Otherwise, boss phase is at 70 and 40% to do this consumption damage. It didn't seem like it was ticking too hard as long as you broke it relatively quickly. What I was most concerned about was this Reaver. That's why I dropped the Ursul's here, because the Reaver debuffing someone while that was happening, I was a little scared of, so dropped the Ursul's to stop that from happening. These acid expulsion things, the swirlies here are based on your previous movement. So if you moved a lot, I probably moved too much there, your next swirly is going to kind of imitate the movement you did on the previous one, which is why you want to move as little as possible for those swirlies. You don't want to run across the room here. You're going to create a rocket of a swirly, so don't do that. Now you can see the larvas are fixating people. Again, I'm running away. Everyone else on the opposite side for the mind link. Larvas are fixating people. Use slows, use AoE stuns, anything you can to prevent this from happening. Once their fixate is done, then they have an aggro table. But if you just never kill them and then the fixate is done and the next fixate starts, those will start fixating the new fixate target. So be aware of that. Make sure they are dead before that happens. And they do hit quite hard. As you can see, I think people almost died there to this one. Yeah, they kind of just ran in, got him. He did a Ring of Frost, but I believe then we changed the stun. You should be able to get away from that one. But it can get scary, right? If you don't use CCs, if you don't get away from them there, he's getting autoed by them there, almost dying to it. So be careful. Make sure you have a plan to get away from them. Make sure you have, if you have AoE slows in your group, they are very, very, very useful. I will use things like Typhoon and Ursul's if I'm actually in range when they spawn, but obviously the Mind Link overlap can be a little bit tough, especially because now it's always on the tank, so you have to be ready as a tank to move here, and I think this is going to be like a bit of a weird one. We have Binding going out. Oh, it gets interrupted by consumption, that's why, but from there, it's just kind of a repeat, right? You go to the space that is clear. These puddles are spawning both from the swirlies and from these larvae dying, so be aware of that. And just kind of try and find clear space. So you see we're trying to move now. All this area is filled. There are still also invisible puddles on the ground sometimes, so be aware of that as well. If you start seeing you're taking a lot of ticking damage, I have like a sound alert for when I touch a puddle. So if I'm hearing that sound alert and not seeing anything, I know there's an invisible puddle there. So just be aware of that. Otherwise, that is it for this dungeon, guys. Hopefully it does help you out, and if any questions at all, please do drop them in the comments below. Remember, I'll be posting videos just like this one for every single War Within dungeon in Season 1. I'll also be doing specific guides for any really difficult bosses people are struggling with in dungeons. Let me know if you have any of those down in the comments. And of course, raid guides, mythic boss guides are coming out soon. Heroic boss guides are already all out. Otherwise, I got to give a big shout out to my amazing Patreons for their continued support, and I'll see everyone in the next video.